History is absolutely full of dark moments, but every now and then we stumble across a story so incredibly twisted and honestly so perfectly ironic that it feels like it was ripped straight out of a horror movie script. Today in this explainer, we're going to dive deep into one of the most terrifying inventions in human history. We're talking about the Brazen Bull.
Now, if I were to ask you to imagine history's absolute worst punishments, your mind might go to some pretty gruesome places, right? You might think of medieval dungeons where people were cut in half, or that horrifying rat torture method, or maybe even the early, clumsy days of electrocution. Humanity has, unfortunately, never lacked creativity when it comes to dealing out pain. But brace yourself, because the device we're looking at today literally outshines all of those in pure calculated cruelty. So, it begs the question, what is the cruelest invention in history?
Section 1. The ultimate torture device.
Okay, let's establish exactly what this nightmare was. The Brazen Bull, which you might also hear referred to as the Bronze Bull or the Sicilian Bull, was a hollow, life-sized execution device crafted entirely out of solid brass. But it wasn't just a metal container. It was engineered with a deeply twisted dual purpose. It was built to slowly and painfully roast a human being alive while simultaneously acting as theatrical entertainment for the ruler who ordered it.
Now, you're probably thinking, okay, come on, that sounds totally unbelievable. This has to be a myth, right? But it's really not. The existence and use of the Brazen Bull are heavily rooted in actual historical records. Its horrifying mechanics were documented by highly esteemed ancient Greek historians. Most notably, a historian named Diodorus Siculus, who dedicated extensive writings to explaining exactly how this device was utilized by cruel rulers of the ancient world.
Section 2. Engineering the Bronze Bull.
Let's break down the sheer dark engineering of how this contraption operated, step by horrifying step. First, the victim was locked inside the hollow belly of the beast. Second, a massive fire was lit directly underneath the statue, heating the brass until it was literally scorching hot, effectively roasting the person inside. But here is where it goes from a basic torture device to something truly sinister. Step 3. A complex system of internal pipes in the bull's head caught the victim's frantic screams, physically altered the acoustics, and projected them out of the bull's mouth as this melodic, bellowing song. And finally, step 4. They placed incense and perfumes near the nostrils of the bull, so the smoke wafting out smelled sweet, entirely masking the horrifying scent of burning flesh.
It's like a bizarre, split reality, and it brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast of the device. On the inside of the bull, you have a human being trapped in a scorching metal oven, experiencing sheer, unimaginable agony. But on the outside, the observers standing around in the courtyard just experienced pleasant, soothing music and the sweet smell of incense. The victim's ultimate suffering was literally repackaged into a sensory delight for the spectators.
Section 3. The inventor's deadly pitch.
So, who actually dreams up a literal torture oven? Let's look at the key players. The time frame we are looking at is between 570 and 554 BC. The inventor was a man named Perillos, who was a highly skilled, incredibly ambitious sculptor and brass worker from Athens. And he pitched this whole idea to a man named Phalaris, the tyrant of Acragas in Sicily. Now, Phalaris was already notorious for his cruelty, and he was actively hunting for a fresh, unique, and highly theatrical way to punish his enemies. Perillos saw an opportunity to win some massive royal favor, and so the Brazen Bull was born.
Just imagine that for a second. A cruel ruler enjoying the punishment of others through sweet music. Phalaris didn't just want to eliminate his political rivals, he wanted to be entertained by them. He wanted to sit back on his throne, enjoy a beautiful afternoon, and listen to some sweet music, knowing full well that the melody was powered by the agony of someone who had crossed him. It's really the ultimate arrogant flex of a tyrant's power.
Section 4. A tyrant's ironic end.
Okay, the absolute irony of this invention starts literally on day 1. When Piphirelos proudly presented his finished masterpiece, the tyrant Phalaris was thrilled. But, he wanted proof. He wanted to ensure those complex acoustic pipes actually worked. He wanted to hear the music. So, in a massive, shocking twist, Phalaris ordered his guards to throw the inventor, Piphirelos, inside the bull and light the fire. The very first screams to be converted into sweet music belonged to the man who designed the machine.
But wait, because the irony deepens beautifully here. Now, Perillos was actually pulled out before he completely died, though Phalaris just threw him off a cliff right after, but the bull immediately became the tyrant's favorite tool of execution. Fast forward a bit, and the boomerang of cruelty comes all the way back around. When Phalaris was eventually overthrown by a local uprising, the people decided there was only one fitting way for him to die. The cruel ruler was locked inside his own prized Brazen Bull and roasted alive. He experienced the exact same agony he had inflicted on so many others.
Section 5. The Roman Empire's Revival.
Tracing this timeline reveals a terrifying historical arc. It starts way back in ancient Greece between 570 and 554 BC when Perillus invents the bull. Then comes Trial 1, where the inventor himself gets roasted. Then the overthrow, where the tyrant Phalaris meets his poetic end inside the belly of the beast. You'd think the story ends there, right? But it doesn't. Centuries later, in the 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire actually revives this horrifying device for their own use.
Before the Roman Empire eventually converted to Christianity, they ruthlessly persecuted early Christians. And historical records indicate that during the 2nd century, the Romans dusted off the concept of the Brazen Bull as a method of spectacular public execution for these religious minorities. One of the most notable victims from this era is said to be Saint Eustace, who, along with his entire family, was reportedly roasted alive inside a brass bull by the order of the Roman emperor.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to really chew on. What does the Brazen Bull teach us about the boomerang effect of human cruelty? Look, the Brazen Bull is undeniably a monument to human depravity, for sure, but it's also a striking monument to poetic justice. Both the ambitious engineer who conceived it and the arrogant tyrant who commissioned it ultimately fell victim to their own wicked design. It leaves us with a haunting yet oddly satisfying lesson. The traps we build for others are very, very often the ones we end up falling into ourselves. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive, and keep seeking out the fascinating truths hidden in our history.